So as 2024 draws to a close and we walk into a fresh new year of exciting possibilities and probably the most interesting year we've seen in Nintendo's history in quite some time, today I want to discuss likely what a lot of Nintendo's 2025 will look like, because couple things obviously we know to expect: the big reveal of Nintendo Switch 2, and while you can be ultra downplay expectations and skeptical and think that maybe there's a shot they reveal the console and don't launch it in the same year, I think that's highly unlikely. I'm thinking 6 months or less at the most from the reveal to release, and we know from Furukawa's own words that the end of March, the 31st to be exact, in 2025 is the latest that they will give us this first look at their new hardware, because that's what they've committed to themselves. Now, we have some interesting titles that we already know to expect from Nintendo's 2025 lineup, but things get way more exciting after we learn about their new console hardware, because what sells a new system? It is the games at the end of the day. And so in this video, I want to briefly walk through exactly what we know to expect already from Nintendo from a games release perspective in 2025, and then veer into some of the rumor mill speculation, likely due to some leakers and stuff we have talking about various different titles that we should be able to more or less safely expect to hit over the course of the first year for Nintendo Switch 2, or even some additional Switch 1 games we don't know about yet officially, to help fill out the first party software release from Nintendo in 2025. So we're going to get on the same page with all of this. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And I want to first briefly walk through the games that we know are out. In fact, we'll just get the two that have exact release dates out of the way, because right on January 16th, the middle of the month, we of course have Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, which is a Wii era game originally. It then had a 3DS port later on and had some additional levels added to it. We are getting probably a mix of both versions, but it looks like they may have just spruced up the 3DS version, because that is the version that has the additional levels. Anyway, full price $60 port, which I'm a hardcore Donkey Kong fan. I'm going to pick it up, but I definitely understand some of the hesitation around the price point for that title. And then moving right along, we may get a February game, we may not, but I'm still personally expecting a February direct to take place, and I do think a title like Metroid Prime 2 and or 3 at the same time as a Shadow Drop digital release and then a physical edition release slightly thereafterwards is highly likely for a February game. Just to add in that quick 2 cents, because we do know that Prime 4 Beyond is also out in 2025, but in March officially we do have on the 20th Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition to look forward to, and this was one of the long-awaited Wii U ports that fans would wonder if we would ever see it pop up on Switch, and we randomly on Twitter got an official announcement one morning from Nintendo that this game that fans are wanting the entire life cycle of Switch is just surprise. It's our March game for the Switch 1, and that will be out again on the 20th. So from there, we have a couple games that are very exciting from a first-party Nintendo perspective, but not exact release dates in 2025 as of yet. The biggest one for me personally is Metroid Prime 4. I largely got into playing the Metroid franchise and became a hardcore fan of it from Metroid Prime 1 and fell in love with that entire 3D action adventure first person shooting with, you know, a lock-on mechanic. I'm not even a first person shooting guy. I don't really get into many of those style of games, but Prime is a whole different beast for me. And, you know, the platforming elements, the puzzle elements, the constant feel of progression that you know and love from every Metroid installment, where you're leveling things up, you're getting new abilities, new arm cannons, you have to come back to certain rooms that you couldn't get past later on, so there's that memory aspect involved. Just absolutely love everything about Metroid games from 2D and 3D entries. But Prime 4, it's been a long time coming, and literally the entire Switch's generation we've known about this game and are finally going to see it release at the tail end of the Switch 1. And there's even some minor speculation online going around, and maybe an insider or two hinting at the fact that Metroid Prime 4 might actually be the launch game for Nintendo Switch 2 hardware, which would be very interesting to see Nintendo go in that direction, but it is a possibility, and we know at the very least it's coming to Switch at some point in 2025, and I'm thinking that May/June timeline that we might actually see Switch 2 launch in could actually be a prime candidate, no pun intended, for this game. So I will personally be picking up Prime 4 Beyond day one, obviously, And from there, a game that will absolutely also be out in 2025 with a simultaneous worldwide release is Pokemon Legends ZA. And we haven't gotten a single look at gameplay of this title yet, surprisingly, because Game Freak actually has, I think, listened to the feedback this time around that they got from Scarlet and Violet launching in essentially almost broken or unplayable states. I mean, you could argue that the Switch 1 is definitely a factor with how aged that hardware is, but it's just also not well optimized. The frame dips and just what you see happen, even to this day, with some new patches and things, they've never really fixed the performance issue. And I do believe that us seeing no gameplay for this game and just getting that 2025 launch year window does actually spell good things for this title and the overall quality that we should hopefully be able to expect from day one when it does launch in 2025. I'm personally expecting this to launch somewhere in the middle time of the year, probably that June, July, maybe even as late as August, but that's all we know from an official first party standpoint in terms of official software that's been announced and that will be out in 2025. So this is where some of the exciting possibilities and some of these games we'll talk through put out there by journalists in the industry, other ones, some of your known insiders and people that have leaked games in the past suggesting that certain titles are coming to Switch 2, but these next games do largely tie into, we will probably see them announced after Nintendo reveals and launches their next gen hardware, or they will be revealed to us in the build up to Nintendo's next gen hardware launch. And number one, and a very obvious pick, if it's not the launch game, it's probably coming out shortly thereafterwards, is a brand new 3D Mario adventure. It will have been 8 years as of October in 2025 since the release of Super Mario Odyssey. And if that doesn't make you say, wow, I don't know what does, but almost 10 years going without a brand new 3D Mario installment. We saw that kind of smaller sandbox test of a more open zone connected 3D Mario with Bowser's Fury, which was kind of just tack on content to the Wii U port of Mario 3D World on the Switch. But nonetheless, this is a big gap in time, and Nintendo's had all these past 7.5, 8 years to craft something amazing for 3D Mario. And after seeing what Wonder did with almost reinventing and reinvigorating the 2D Mario franchise, I personally cannot wait to see what they've come up with their creative minds over there with the brand new 3D Mario experience. And I think at some point within the launch year of Nintendo Switch 2, we absolutely get this game. It is also Mario's 40th anniversary next year, which you know what they did for the 35th. We got those additional ports, like I mentioned already, Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, but we also got Super Mario 3D All-Stars, which gave us 64, Sunshine, and Galaxy all playable on the Switch. Hopefully we get Galaxy 2 in some way, shape, or form this time. Mario 3D Land, you know, there's some additional missing games in the Switch ecosystem and the Switch 2 ecosystem that we could see brought over potentially, and I think Nintendo really continues to elevate these Mario anniversary celebrations and kind of flooding the content. And because, well, one, Mario's transcending into this mega, even non-gamer household recognizable character, and you can argue he's been there kind of for years, but they're going into movies with Mario now, and we know we're going to get the sequel to the Super Mario Bros. Movie in 2026, and I think all of this content for the Switch 2 initially, at least a lot of it, will be very Mario focused. And on that note, besides the 3D Mario, another shoe-in title that I think will release at some point in 2025, likely as the holiday game in my opinion, is none other than the next entry in the Mario Kart franchise. And I think this could be 9, it could be 10, who knows what they'll name it. I don't think they go Nintendo Kart. Mario Kart is quite literally Nintendo's most successful franchise ever from a sales perspective, because while it's had some holiday bundles and stuff that have helped it sell at 64 million plus total units, and even way more than that with the Wii U numbers factored in there, this game has sold more on its own as a non-pack-in game, not counting like Wii Sports, you know, from the Wii era, because people have continued to buy this game month in and month out. It's always at the top of the sales charts for Nintendo Switch all these years later, and it's technically over 10 years old. And Nintendo got the message of just how successful this game was, so much so that they decided to go back and double the amount of courses with the Booster Course Pass. And I personally think that Mario Kart 9, 10, or whatever it ends up being called, Mario Kart Ultimate, I think it's going to hit the next gen console, and I think they're going to try to actually outdo what they did with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe from a total course perspective, not at launch, but rather, I think this could be the first closest thing we see to Nintendo having like a generation long update schedule, where it's not just going to be a year or two of new content. We might get booster course waves for this next Mario Kart game throughout most of the Switch 2's hardware lifecycle, which is a very exciting prospect to me, and I do think Nintendo will do it to keep the engagement with the Mario Kart franchise high. Now from there, my personal all-time favorite Nintendo franchise is none other than The Legend of Zelda, and fortunately during the Nintendo Switch's life cycle, we've seen this essentially become somewhat of an annual release franchise for Nintendo, meaning in some way, shape, or form, whether it be a 2D port or remaster, or a classic 3D entry in the franchise brought over for the first time, aka like a Skyward Sword HD, we've seen Nintendo actually deliver some form of a Zelda game in every year of the Nintendo Switch's life cycle, minus 2022, which was the original launch year for Tears of the Kingdom. But outside of that one blip in the schedule, we've essentially seen something new Zelda in some way, shape, or form, and Echoes of Wisdom being our most recent title, I think that early on into the Switch 2's life cycle, they're going to want to have something that's playable on Switch 2, maybe even on Switch 1, and I am going back to the age-old rumor that I've been talking about, quite honestly, since I started this channel, and I still am waiting for it to happen, and I'm hoping early into Switch 2's life cycle it will. That's Zelda Wind Waker HD and or Twilight Princess HD being brought over in some way, shape, or form. Since it's not tied to an anniversary, I actually think we see these released individually, so probably Wind Waker first at a full $60 port, and maybe then Twilight Princess, I hope, gets a more detailed HD remaster down the line, because I actually think that that one could use a little bit of a visual upgrade. I think Wind Waker HD, just make it 60 FPS. Maybe you want to add in some extra bonus content packed in with it, that's perfectly fine, but Zelda fans are ready to replay these games again, and because these released on the Wii U, which only sold 13 million total consoles, they are a no-brainer port to bring over at some point during the end of the Switch's life cycle and into the Nintendo Switch 2's life cycle, and I do think there's a small chance we see at least one or both of these games out in 2025. Now lastly, I want to kind of have a miscellaneous section and mention a few different franchise names that are obviously going to release at some point in the Nintendo Switch 2's life cycle, but I do think that some of these could be sooner than others, and this is where 2025 becomes more of a coin toss on if we'll see these games come out in that year or not. But I do think towards the beginning of the life cycle, we're gonna get a new Smash Bros. It might not be year one, but no doubt Sakurai has already said that he's been working on an unnamed project that he can't reveal yet for a couple of years, and even though he says every single time he doesn't know how he can outdo what he's already done, maybe not from a character roster standpoint, but I think this is gonna be a bigger and better Smash than Ultimate, if you can believe that. It's gonna be more refined, it's gonna have excellent visuals, and a crazy still big character roster. Animal Crossing, with its massive 46+ million units sold on the Switch, will absolutely get a installment at some point in the Switch 2's life cycle, probably within the first couple years. And I mean, you really don't have to guess with this one, it's just a matter of when, because when you sell 46 million units on a prior console, this is going to be a big focal point for Nintendo, and it might be hard to top because Animal Crossing did actually release right in the perfect time where everybody was kind of staying home more than usual and not doing their regular daily tasks, and it definitely tapped into a new market there, but it continued to sell very well. And so yeah, it's going to release probably earlier rather than later on the next gen hardware. Kirby Planet Robobot is actually a 3DS port that has been leaked by Nate the Hate. He doesn't just go out and claim random things if they don't happen. I think this one is absolutely a shoe-in for 2025, and we should be able to expect it, and that might be the only Kirby content we get in 2025, but rest assured we'll get the follow-up to Forgotten Land at some point into the Switch 2's life cycle, and I'm very hopeful for the return of a couple long beloved forgotten franchises, one of them getting a lot of love recently on the end of the Switch's generation with F-Zero. Like, all the games in the franchise are now playable minus GX via NSO, of course. F-Zero 99 that continues to get great quality content updates, and I think Nintendo's serious about bringing back F-Zero in their next gen hardware, and hopefully, just hopefully, we see something in the Star Fox franchise maybe reinvented altogether. Is it a Star Fox 64 style space shooter again, or is it a melding of what Star Fox Adventures was with some space elements kind of tied in there to break up the gameplay loop? I don't know, but I hope Nintendo finally brings back and figures out Star Fox in the year of 2025 and beyond. So let me know in the comments down below what, if any, of the games you are most excited for coming to Nintendo Switch and Switch 2 as we talk about walking into the big official console hardware transition year. And do you think many of the games I suggested will indeed be there? Or do you think it might be a lighter year one software release schedule for Nintendo, and we may have to wait into years like 2026 to see a lot of the games that we talked about here in this video? And what are some games and franchises that I didn't mention that you definitely hope we see sooner rather than later for Nintendo's next gen platform? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.